The Week 14 college football playoff rankings just dropped, and we have some very interesting movement. Not a ton, but it's very important where it is and who it is as we are setting up for a massive rivalry week. Appreciate you joining us here at Crain & Company. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're almost to 200K. Check out all the videos. We put out a ton already this week. Very excited to break down what the committee just gave us, because there's some things that are pretty interesting. As I mentioned, as David Cohn, former Michigan quarterback, I'm sure is going to tell you about his alma mater jumping up a couple spots. Blaine Crain, former Western State, Colorado wide receiver as well, I know, found a couple things also very intriguing that just happened. Before we get into it, though, as usual, all right, I want to go through the top 25 quickly. Arizona's at 25. Tulane is the only group of 5 team at 24. Georgia Tech at 23. Pitt at 22. SMU at 21. Arizona State at 20. Tennessee at 19. Virginia at 18. USC drops to 17. Texas is at 16. Michigan moves up to 15. Going to get into that one. Vandy at 14. Utah at 13. Miami at 12. BYU at 11. Bama stays at 10. Notre Dame stays at 9. Oklahoma's at 8. Ole Miss is at 7. Oregon is at 6. Texas Tech is at 5. The top 4 remains the same. Georgia at 4, A&M at 3, Indiana at 2, Ohio State at 1. And to me, I want to delve into this movement that can have a huge effect on these bubble teams, because that's what this thing's going to come down to, is these teams on the bubble. But I also want to make a caveat and a note here. And I'm not saying it's right, but if I'm an Ole Miss fan and I just watched us drop from 6 to 7 on a bye week, playing Mississippi State and looking at who is directly behind me, I am now a little bit worried that they may not be in as much as I thought they were, or a guaranteed locked up spot with them moving down one. David, I know the Michigan movement's crucial there, but Blaine, I want to start with you quickly. If Ole Miss loses to Mississippi State, I know they have the head-to-head over Oklahoma, but the committee does not care about head-to-head right now. I mean, Notre Dame, it's when you lost. That's what it looks like to me, and it's eye test, quote unquote. If Ole Miss loses to Mississippi State, I think they drop behind Oklahoma. I think they drop behind Notre Dame. I think they drop behind Alabama. I think they drop behind BYU. I don't know what will happen with them in Miami, but I think there's a good chance they're out if they lose.
If they lose the Egg Bowl.
If they lose the Egg Bowl and Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Alabama, BYU win, I think they may be out.
That would be extremely surprising to me if they do, one, lose the Egg Bowl, two, and if they do, that they get pushed all the way out of the playoffs. You can pull up Ole Miss's resume and their wins and losses, and they can stack really well with a lot of teams and with the head-to-head over who, Jake?
Well, Oklahoma, but the head-to-head, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, Miami has the head-to-head over Notre Dame.
Yeah, from a committee standpoint, it's an absolute disaster. It keeps getting worse and worse every week. It makes no sense. I'm telling you from my standpoint, right? I don't know what these idiots are going to do with the committee. Nothing would surprise me. But I think Ole Miss has proven throughout the year that they're good enough to be a playoff team. And if they lose the Egg Bowl...
Agreed. I agree with you, but what I'm saying is it doesn't matter what we want it to be. I'm telling you what I think the committee's going to do. That's the only thing that counts.
I don't think anybody knows what these people are going to do.
Man, I'm trying to find some Cone. I mean, what do you think about it? I mean, am I crazy thinking that?
I mean, no, you're not crazy, but that's where they need to be beating the drum on that win over Oklahoma. That thing's looking better and better. Where we thought the win over LSU might be the best win if they were able to win that game. Now it's looking like Oklahoma, and you would have a head-to-head scenario. But tonight was all about the bubble teams, in my opinion, because I mean, last week, USC was the only top 15 team to lose from last week's ranking. So this is what made the bubble edition so fascinating. That won't be the case a week from now. Next Tuesday, we're really going to know, because so many of these rivalry games are going to take shape. Personally, watching Oregon jump Ole Miss but not jump Texas Tech or Georgia, I was fine with. Personally, watching Miami jump Utah, I was fine with. And to be honest, I think Vanderbilt would have a good case too. I don't have an issue with that, so I understand why you're bringing up if Ole Miss was to lose the Egg Bowl. But let's be honest, that would be a bad loss, or that would at least be not a great loss for Ole Miss given the opponent and the timing. At the same time, it's a rivalry game, and you would have gone 10-2 in the SEC. To me, that is circumstantial, because you're saying if Ole Miss loses the Egg Bowl, and I would follow up, okay, well, what does Vanderbilt do against Tennessee? What does Michigan do against the Buckeyes? Does Miami find their way into the ACC championship game or not? All of that matters, because at some point we're going to have a log jam of 10-2 teams. And as far as Michigan moving up a couple spots, it means very little to me. One, you should have already been ahead of Texas. I don't know why it took this long. Two, the head-to-head over USC, which you were behind, is not triggered anymore because USC picked up that third loss. And honestly, you already know what your mission is. This is the same for Vanderbilt. You know what your mission is. Who cares? You need to go beat Tennessee. Michigan needs to go beat the Buckeyes. And at that point, you could possibly play your way into the Big Ten championship game and win your way in.
Yeah, and we talked about when we did our college football playoff projections yesterday that we put out, how interesting it's going to be to see where Michigan ends up, because we do know, and again, we're going through like upset scenarios here because we have to. Obviously, if Michigan loses, they're not going to be in the college football playoff. Ohio State is most likely going to stay at number 1. But, if they're going to get that type of jump after beating Maryland, what kind of jump are they going to get if they go beat Ohio State?
That's the question. That is the premier question.
100%. And to me, and I don't mean this disrespectful to Utah, but of the top 15 teams that are all in contention, because I think that's where the contention stops, talking about at large, right? Because if Virginia wins the ACC, they're going to be in. Outside of that, Georgia Tech needs some craziness to happen, and then obviously Tulane as the group of 5 rep, and SMU and Pitt there at 21 and 22. The ACC, we're waiting on that. But as far as at large contention, it feels like Utah's the lame duck in the top 15, doesn't it? It feels like Utah is not going to get... I
just don't know how Utah can work their way back in.
They can't. That's what I'm saying. So if Vandy beats Tennessee, they are going to jump Utah. If Michigan beats Ohio State, they are going to jump Utah. So I think Utah is out. I think Utah is out right now. We can treat them as out. But when you look at what this could mean for Vandy, what's fascinating to me is, where do you draw the line if, let's say BYU were to lose. Let's say it were to come down to Vandy and Miami for that last at-large spot. You'd have 2 10-2 teams. Vandy's 2 losses would have been at Texas, and if Texas beats Texas A&M, that loss is going to look even better with Texas at 9-3. And then obviously at Alabama, who if they beat Auburn, we know they're going to be in the college football playoff regardless. Would Vandy jump Miami regardless of what Miami does against Pitt, who's sitting there at 22, and I know Tennessee's at 20? I mean, Blaine, how would you handle that if you were the committee?
Well, it comes down. Well, the only thing that matters to them is eye test. So, any point, if you just play really well that week, they're going to put you in no matter what, right? I've heard it every time. I've heard it 17 times. They're an eye test committee. But what it really comes down to, and I feel like we've argued this every week, what matters more, great wins or bad losses, right? You look at Vandy, they have great losses, right, in Alabama. Texas, I maybe wouldn't call great. We'll see what happens in the A&M game. But what is Vanderbilt's best win? I mean, after the Tennessee game, we can say Tennessee, but right now you go through their schedule, there's nothing really that stands out. Then you go look at Miami. I mean, you have that win over Notre Dame. Your losses aren't great, obviously, but it comes down to which one weighs more, and we've talked about this. Y'all weigh great wins over bad losses, correct?
I do if everything else is equal. If records are equal and there's no
what else
head-to-head.
what else would not be equal when it came to Vanderbilt, right? I mean, same
No,
records.
that's what I'm agreeing with you, but let's say Vandy goes up and beats Tennessee by 10. Mm-hmm. Let's say Miami beats Pitt by 3 in a barn burner. And Diego Pavia, a Heisman finalist, or at least a Heisman rep, and a lightning rod in college football, is sitting there, and we're seeing if Vanderbilt is going to make the college football playoff.
And that's a tough one. I mean, that is a tough one. And look, everybody loves the Vanderbilt story. How could you not be a human being if you didn't love the Vanderbilt story and them, being the underdog and possibly making the college football playoff at 10-2 with the Diego Pavia star that they have? I will say this, on the things that this committee was talking about, and listening to ESPN tonight with Booger McFarland and Joey Galloway, both said, well, if it comes down to Notre Dame and Miami, you're really going to have to see who the common opponents are, such as Pitt and Syracuse. I kid you not. Each of them said it. Just one of them said the common opponents. I seem to remember both those teams playing each other. But since that was all the way back in week 1, we're going to look at the common opponents of Syracuse and Pitt. I'll just say this about Miami. And again, the Vanderbilt story, there's a lot to love. I think Miami was at an extreme disadvantage of when the playoff rankings started.
Yeah.
If the playoff ranking started every Tuesday after week 1, then they would have been ranked high, and then they would have gotten bumped down a reasonable percentage after their first loss. Or if the ranking started this Tuesday after they've reeled off a couple wins here in a row, I think they'd be ranked a little higher. The ranking started the Tuesday in the middle of Miami dropping their 2 losses that they had, and they haven't been able to catch back up. Again, there's too much that's subjective and circumstantial about the way that we're picking these teams right now.
I agree with you 100%. Like, here's what I will say. If I'm an SEC team or any team, to be honest with you, it really doesn't matter. Just name one. And this thing comes down to, and if it comes down to Miami and Notre Dame, if they pick Notre Dame over Miami after Miami beat them straight up and they have equal records, if I was a coach, if I was a athletic director, or if I'm a conference commissioner, we are no longer scheduling tough out-of-conference opponents. Not doing it.
See, but that's
Not
even
doing it.
worse for the sport. That's it's terrible
that's what
for
I'm
the
saying.
sport.
But David, Greg Sankey has now mandated that the SEC has to do it for at least one non-conference. I'm rescinding that because what is the point? What is the point? If I lose, you're going to punish me. And if I win, because we have to do it in the beginning of the season because we play so many conference games, y'all aren't going to count it. We don't even look at that game. We go look at Pitt.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, let's
nuts.
see. Let's see what the committee does. And again, they can just unilaterally make any decision they want on the very last selection Sunday ranking anyway. So I did think it was interesting to see a couple of the ACC teams like flying into this, not barely getting in. I mean, SMU flies up to 21, Pitt up to 22. You had Arizona State from the Big 12 go all the way up to 20. Again, I don't understand why Texas is being valued the way they are. And it's not just the 3 losses. To your point, Jake, I mean, like 3 losses in one conference, you could still be a better team than a 1-loss team in another conference. But in addition to those losses, I watch you have to survive Kentucky in overtime and Mississippi State in overtime. So I just don't understand the love for Texas at this point.
I agree with you. And again, that's what makes it interesting to think, well, what happens if they beat A&M? Like, if y'all love Texas this much with 3
Which I think they really could.
I mean, they could.
In Austin, are you kidding me?
Yeah, they could.
-2.5.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also, you know, another thing that's kind of interesting is let's say that, you know, we have some craziness 16 through 22 and Georgia Tech beats Georgia. Like, how does that work out at the end of the day? Like, let's say Pitt loses. Let's say, you know, Tennessee loses. Let's say that Virginia loses. And let's say that Texas loses. I mean, where do you value Georgia Tech at the end of this? I don't think they're going to get in unless they play in the ACC championship. But there's so many things I think that can happen. Tulane at 24. Do we agree that should be the – I know, Blaine, you've been pounding the James Madison drum.
Well, I just want to understand why, right? Not only the James Madison drum, but the North Texas drum.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, as well, if
don't
you can
get that
sit here
either.
and explain to me why Tulane would be ranked ahead of them and give me logical reasons, then yeah, I'll tip my cap and we'll call it a day. But I guarantee you they can't do that, right? And I don't want to get into spider webs too much of this could happen, if this could happen. But I just want to – why did Miami jump Utah and Vanderbilt?
I don't mind it.
But why? Because they beat Virginia Tech beat them by 10.
Well, Miami didn't jump Vanderbilt. They jumped
Houston,
Utah.
a struggle with Kansas State. I can understand that. Vanderbilt pants.
Miami
Kentucky.
was already in front
Miami
of
was already ahead of
Vanderbilt.
Like last week, Miami was 13,
just
Vandy was
Houston.
14. So in reality, I think the better way to phrase that would be, why did Miami jump Utah and Vanderbilt didn't jump Utah? I think that's probably the
Which
biggest
I would have
question.
been fine with that too.
I would have been fine with that too. I want to be Jigsaw and get on the tricycle with the mask with the bullseye painted on it, and let's play a game for a second. I want to play a game called Win and In. All right, if you win, then you're in. And I just want to go through these teams, and each one of you, David, I'll start with you, and then I'll go to Blaine. I'm going to ask, if they win, are they in? We're going to skip Ohio State, Indiana, and Texas A&M. And I want to start with Georgia. Some of these are going to be obvious, but I think all 3 teams, we agree they could lose, and they're still going to be in the college football playoffs. Speaking of Ohio State, Indiana, and A&M.
I mean, you could mark Texas Tech off that too. They have just as good a percentage of all these other teams.
Yeah, but I want to ask that one. So Georgia, they beat Georgia Tech. We all agree they're in at 11-1, right?
They could lose to Georgia Tech and still be in.
I don't think you're wrong. Texas Tech, Win and end. We agree.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oregon, win and end. We agree.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ole
I think
Miss.
it's
Oh,
the
go ahead,
case
David.
for. I think it's the case for every team up to BYU.
That's
Sure.
I agree with that. So Ole Miss, obviously, Oklahoma, yes. Notre Dame, I guess we got to say yes at this point, and Bama, we have to say yes. So BYU, win and you're in? I don't think so.
No, exactly. But now, what could be interesting for Notre Dame is they could win. Now, if BYU moves forward and wins the Big 12, how far would Texas Tech drop in that scenario? And then you have to ask the question, okay, well, who's the ACC representative? Because Miami's the first one here at 12, but we already said their chances to win the ACC or even get in that ACC championship game are at what, 13%? Yeah. So if you have someone like Virginia coming all the way back from 18 to win that, conference, then you can have a situation where, like, man, Notre Dame is just getting bumped further and further back, even though the committee has valued them so highly for so long.
Yeah, well, I mean, to your point, Cone, if Miami were to be in that position, that means they beat Pitt, which now Pitt is out. And then, you could have a scenario where Virginia is playing SMU in the ACC championship. Either one of those teams win with their record, they're going to get that automatic bid, not the automatic top 4 seed like it was last year, but the automatic bid. So we feel like the bid stealers right now could be BYU, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the biggest one.
Yep.
And then obviously whoever comes out of the ACC would steal a bid. I mean, if we end up in a world where Notre Dame finishes at 10-2, so I mean, how many spots would be taken at that point? You'd have, let's say, the top 11 win. All right, so they move on. We know that we feel like those teams are all in. Who's the one that gets left out if BYU beats Texas Tech? Because I think Texas Tech is still in. Who?
That's the question, man.
It'd be
Who's going to
Miami.
be the one left at the dance?
Well, them for sure. But I mean, even going up as far as Notre Dame at 9 again, and that gets to where, like, Alabama's in an interesting situation where they have to win, but them winning puts them in the ACC championship game. It's a little bit like what we said with Michigan, except Michigan just beating the Buckeyes doesn't put them in. Oregon or Indiana then need to lose a game, so they don't completely control their own destiny. But so if Alabama loses, then yeah, that moves a spot. But if they win, now they're going to be playing in Atlanta. What happens if you have a 10-3 Alabama team who loses the SEC championship game? I don't think you're out of the playoff, but you're probably not hosting. And then again, that gets into, well, who's winning? Again, SMU at 21 is a fascinating dark horse bid stealer right now.
Yeah. No, 100%. And Blaine, we've said all year, we think if you play in the Big Ten championship game, whether you win or lose, you are in. If you play in the SEC championship game, whether you win or lose, you are in. I'm just, to Cone's point, man, I'm sitting here looking at, and this is where if you're Bama, Auburn being bad this year really sucks. Like that hurts. Because, again, you beat Auburn, it doesn't look like a great win in the metrics, but we know what this game is on the road. If you were to beat a ranked Auburn team or a championship relevant Auburn team, I think that would 100% put you in. But if Alabama were to lose that SEC championship game and go 10-3, and you have Notre Dame sitting there at 10-2, you've got Oklahoma sitting there at 10-2, you've got Ole Miss sitting there at 11-1. All those teams ahead of them, I think, are in. So then if BYU beats Texas Tech and BYU is an automatic bid, does Texas Tech get in over Alabama? And then remember, we have the ACC champion rep and then the group of 5 rep. Like, there is a real world where we're sitting here discussing Alabama or a Texas Tech team that lost in the Big 12 championship game to BYU as who gets that 11 spot. I think they'd give it to Texas Tech.
Just Alabama 2 years in a row of just having the other team pick before them.
Saban ain't there, man.
I never thought we would have that type of conversation. I don't know. I would probably go Texas Tech too in that situation. And I guess how much does it mean how you lose in that championship game? I think with this committee, when it comes to eye test, I think that'll play into it. I don't know. I just feel like these guys have boxed themselves into multiple corners where they're not going to find a way out of. And I don't know if there is a way out of it. And Jake, you keep saying that Auburn's not a good team. I mean, I see us sitting right there at the 12 seed. Looking Texas Tech,
is John Summerall
Texas Tech right down the eye. So I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, David, like, again, if we're sitting here Okay, because remember, we have another reveal before the conference
Yep.
championship games, then the final reveal. Alabama is not going to if the teams win in front of Alabama and they beat Auburn, they are not jumping any of those teams for beating Auburn. They're not going to jump any of them.
Yeah,
So
but they will solidify themselves a spot in the SEC championship game. And again,
they
they will
will.
add their name to the list of teams who can just win a spot. You know, that's the thing. If you're a BYU fan right now, I know a lot of what we're saying and what we have been saying hurts to hear, but at the end of the day, you could just go win a spot. Michigan doesn't control their own destiny, but you could possibly just go win a spot. Same for SMU, even possibly still Georgia Tech or Miami. So that is one interesting thing, which is why I like that the conference champions get an automatic bid in.
Yeah, why
yes,
do you think Alabama won't jump up a spot if they beat Auburn? Miami just jumped up a spot and they beat Virginia Tech.
because they're not going to move Notre Dame back. They've told you they're not going to do it. Like
Again,
they're not going to do it. They're not going to move.
One
Go
response here to Blaine, and he was asking this question earlier. I think a lot of this too is when the committee feels like they undervalued a team before, and they start to hear some of the outside pressure. That sometimes all it takes is like a win over, like a, whatever you said, a Virginia Tech or something, which isn't right, quite honestly. But I think they're trying to make up in some instances for where they may have been wrong in previous weeks.
See, this is why we just need to let the public vote in 12 people. Just let the public vote them in. 12 people.
That'd be worse than the AP poll, dog. Like we need a panel. We need a panel of unaffiliated people. We say this every week, but I want to make sure I get this scenario out before it gets out of my head, because I think Bama's the most fascinating team in this thing. I really think they are, because remember, again, Blaine, to the point I was making, they're not going to jump Notre Dame. They beat Auburn. They're not going to jump Oklahoma. Oklahoma beat them at home, right? So they're not. They wouldn't jump Georgia, right? Because Georgia's just too far. They're too far ahead. Now, if they lose to Georgia Tech, that could change some things. But I don't think Bama's going to jump Georgia if Georgia beats Georgia Tech unless they win the SEC championship game. And then if you're a Bama fan, it's pretty simple. You are rooting for Ohio State to beat Michigan. You are rooting for Tennessee to beat Vanderbilt. You're hoping Miami. I don't think Utah really matters at this point with Bama. You're hoping Miami loses, and then that BYU just doesn't win the Big 12, right? Like, because Michigan could throw a wrench in this whole thing too, man. Like they could throw a wrench in this whole thing too. I'm just trying to find a way in which, the committee is going to have to basically have two equal parts for one spot. And there's like 3 or 4 different ways that could happen, which is not what you want.
No, I mean, someone's going to get left out for no reason at all. Reason at all. You won't get a reason. Like, I hope whichever the team that's
well, at
left
some
out,
point it'll be because you lost games. I mean, there's no like undefeated Power 4 team who's not going to be in the top 12.
That's
yeah.
true.
I'm saying with everything, technically equal, even with a head-to-head, there's going to be no logical reason why they're getting left out. It's going to be eye test. Maybe that's their logic, all right, and that's subjective at best.
Yeah, that's why again they keep calling them an eye test committee. I'm like, then. Like, what does that mean, though? Like, does that mean that if it does a 3-point win over a ranked team weigh heavier than a 30-point win over an unranked team? Like, what does that mean? Like, I just feel like you can't live by that. And that's what they seem like, well, it's eye test. That's what matters the most. They're like, oh, well, and it's true. Look at Utah. They barely survived, and they dropped against a team they were better than. I don't know. I just don't think you can live. You live by that sword, you die by that sword. I'm just not a fan of it. It needs to be multiple things. It just feels like it's not. But anything else in this new college football playoff ranking reveal that you guys are looking at?
The last thing I'll say is on the Tulane point, possibly being the Group of 5 team. Again, they might have to play North Texas in the championship game in their league, and North Texas head coach just took the Oklahoma State job. Again, this thing gets more and more layered like an onion every day.
Well, don't forget, do you know where Tulane would play that conference championship game?
No.
At home. They would play it at home. So you beat Charlotte.
Interesting.
Get a home game for the conference. Now, I know the tickets are split up a little bit different, but I don't know. It's going to be fascinating to watch this. There was some nuance in this one that I thought was pretty interesting. In the comments, let us know. How do you feel about this? Like, I mean, do you feel like they're doing a good job? Give me great job, good job, okay job, bad job, terrible job. You tell us in the comments what you think. Blaine, anything else you want to add here?
I've seen enough.
Seen enough? I can understand that. I think a lot of people have. All right, make sure you're locked in. We're almost to 200,000 subs. We appreciate you guys and like the chances of us not being excited about seeing how this thing plays out. We're going, gone.